Hello and welcome to SynthGen update number 5, part 2. I just kind of wanted to show how I use this thing in case you want to use it. Uh, how do we do this? All right, so first things first, I'm working on making this video, so let's make a task that represents making this video. Um, I have a bunch of IDs here that I've pre-allocated. I have a system for tracking these. So when I run out, I'll go allocate another couple hundred just to keep them in this file. This is a system I wrote for Earth IT like years and years ago. Um, so let's see. Improvements to there is a project in here that's already some TEF files, improvements to list-to-do. Let's call this list-to-do related thing, and that is M4909T93. And we can put the task anywhere, it doesn't matter. Like I could put it at the end. And 119 is the ID that I'm using. Title, make SynthGen update number 5 follow-up to show list to do workflow status in progress. And we use that ID. Basically, anytime you take an ID from one of these files, you need to add project tasks. You need to commit it immediately, lest somebody else take the same ID. Of course, I'm the only one working on this project, so it's relatively safe. But if I was like to quick switch to a different computer that didn't have that change, then I might end up with 2 tasks with the same ID, and that's not good. Um, So really the correct thing with these sort of IDs is to allocate them from a central place. Or have, if you want to cache a whole bunch of them, cache them per computer. That way you don't, if I switch to another computer, I wouldn't use the same one, right? Anyway, what did we do here? I guess this is also a Git tutorial. Um, create task. Well, the T is for task. Saying task is redundant. Make SynthGen. Oh, sure. Yeah, all right. And here we go. I'm working on it, and we'll push that so I don't accidentally, like I said, use that same ID somewhere else. All right. So how do we do that? Oh, we're already doing that. It's in progress. So I guess in the process of making this video, I need to do some other task, right? So let's pick something. So we say I renamed that batch file because it's not really listing to-dos. It's giving me a task. Oh yeah, so OID allocator. Speaking of the system from which I allocate these IDs in the first place, that's called OID allocator. There's some improvements I want to make to those, but I don't want to do those right now. Really what I'd like to do right now. All right. Oh yeah. So currently, list to-dos, I've added this depends on in my to do file, but list to do is not doing anything with that. What that's supposed to mean is that this task, before you can even start working on this task, you need to finish this other one. Before we start 99, we got to start 98. And it's not currently doing that, so that would be a thing we could fix. Let's see if we can. Oops, nope. I didn't want to git push. I wanted to task me. Music stuff. Um, So I'm using this in kind of a funny way right now. Like I'm looking for a very specific task. Extracting for, yeah, that's good stuff. And you may have noticed that that one task actually had multiple, was a part of multiple projects. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, hey, we're working on that one. Cool. Yeah, that's what we're working on. And you might also notice that my music to-do list does not use the same identifier scheme. Really, those are just opaque identifiers as far as list to do is concerned. But this is fine. I mean, running this over and over again and saying, I don't feel like that work I don't feel like working on that right now. That's how you're supposed to use this. Let's see. So what's that task called? It's called don't treat subtask. So what I'm trying to do is get number 98 to show up. Maybe I should make an option when we really want to look at a specific task. Of course, by the time we're done with this, it won't show that other one anymore until we finish 98. Come on, let's spin the wheel. Get number 98. 115. Nope. Nope. I have too many things in this file. That would be a cool thing to do. All right, let's just do this one, because this one doesn't depend on anything, and it is part of the list task project. It's going to be a little bit involved because it requires looking at this other project, TDTEF. Okay, so TDTEF. TDTEF. Do I have it here? Yes, I do. Get what did I change first of all? Oh, so I guess Visual Studio Code was telling me that I wasn't using something, so I removed it, and I didn't even realize that was in this project. Remove unused import from tef.test.ts. Wow, already I have made progress on that project. Neat. So what I'm thinking here is the TDTEF library, which is what list tasks uses for doing the low-level parsing of TEF files. When you call it, you need to pass in an async iterable of uint8 arrays. So you don't pass it a stream, you don't pass it a file, you pass it an async iterable. And you can make an async iterable from a file or a stream relatively easily. But if you want to really do it nice, you got to write some code. And I don't really want to write some code to do that basic thing every time I want to read a TEF file. So like here's list-todo.ts. I wrote this function reader to iterator, and it takes deno.standard input. So it has to do this translation between the reader object and an async iterable just to get something that it can pass to parse TEF pieces, which is um, that's the function in the TEF parser library that kind of does all the work, and a bunch of stuff. TEF pieces if you want some visibility into that. So what does it do? Well, there's like multiple levels of code. So it gets past a TEF chunk reader, and that has some smarts in it because it can read a line or a content chunk. And because of the way TEF is specified, there's some when you're reading a content chunk, there's a little bit of trickiness to it because you got to watch out for certain sequences like a new line followed by an equal sign. Unless that's followed by another equal sign, it's not part of the content. But if it is followed by another equal sign, that actually the first equal sign escapes the second equal sign. So then you would want to treat new line equal equal as a single new line and a single equal sign um, for content reading purposes, because that's the only way in TEF files that you can escape content so that they're not treated as TEF markup as two equal signs at the beginning of a line. Everything else is verbatim. But I'm getting kind of sidetracked here. That's not what I care about. I don't need to worry about any of that stuff right now. What I want to do is take reader to iterator and make it a utility function in TEF, in the TEF library. So where is the TEF library? Let's make sure we're looking at the right, because I mean, if I go over here, this is actually, I think, this is actually looking at the one I downloaded from deno.land because this is published to deno.land. It's not looking at my local copy. TDTEF. Here's my local copy of the library. So if I want to make utilities that are intended to be used by users of the library, I think maybe the right thing to do is make a util folder, and then make stream util, I don't know, streams.ts, something like that. I don't know. There's also this notion of blobs. Maybe I'll call it, my usual way to do this is to call it stream util. So let's call it stream util. And then we just paste our reader to iterator on in there. And that might be fine by itself. So there's two different things you can do. Two different normal ways to create one of these. One is from a file, and one is from something like standard input, just some arbitrary stream. And the thing with, if you're reading from a file, you usually want some finally block at the end that closes the file. And that's why I have reader to iterator. And then if we look in here, there might also be a second, there's file blob like. And these use cases are a little bit different. For one thing, if you're reading from standard input, you can't start over. Whereas if you're reading from a file and you want a new iterator, you can just open the file again and iterate over the contents again. So there's, of course, they don't know about file blob like. Blob like one is actually defined in this other library. What is it called? TD types blob like one. So my TD types is a library that's currently just in the SynthGen project. It's not a, I haven't published it separately. I treat it as if it's a library by putting it in, what's it called? Deno, the import mapping. So I can just say TD types and it'll know what that means. And if I wanted to change it later, I could change the import map to point at deno.land instead of my local file system. But anyway, maybe I should go into what. So in JavaScript, there's a type called a blob, and it represents a bunch of bytes, and they're streamable. So you can like open a input stream. It's like an input stream reader. It's a JavaScript thing. I forget the exact name. But the API for input streams is just it's kind of complicated and doesn't really do exactly what I wanted. So I kind of have my own way of iterating over input streams. And one thing that these do, so blob like one, why did I put a one in there? It's just because maybe sometime I'll come up with a different API that I like and I'll call it blob like two. But so I'm kind of trying to standardize around blob like one. And as much as possible, they're compatible with the other JavaScript blobs. But most of these properties are optional. So if you have some arbitrary data that you want to be able to treat as a blob like, you can do that. But also, if there's a file, it knows what file it came from. So tools that you pass a blob like, and they're like, if this is a file, I want to do something special with it, like maybe make a hard link or something instead of actually iterating over the content, that information is available. And file path is basically a type alias to string. Uh, we're doing some, this is a trick you can do in TypeScript where you sort of do nominal typing by saying it's a string, and if it has any properties, which of course it never will because strings in JavaScript can't have arbitrary properties. If it has any properties and it has this schema symbol as an attribute key, the value is file path. So I'm like on a tangent within a tangent with a tangent, but I think this is kind of cool. Um, by saying if you have this attribute, you never will. But if you did, it's this. That's kind of a way to achieve nominal typing because then if you try to assign a value that's of this type to a value of this type, it'll be like, wait, what are you doing? You can't do that. On the other hand, because this is optional, you can pass any string in because it's like, well, the TypeScript compiler knows that a string doesn't have this, so if you have this, it has to be this. Well, we don't have it, so it's fine. You can assign a string to a file path, to a variable that is allowed to contain file paths, rather, because a file path is a string, and a literal string is a string, and a slug is a string, but a file path is not a slug. Tricky, isn't it? Reminds me of something they tried to teach us in confirmation that didn't make sense at the time, but it makes more sense to me now, I guess. Anyway, uh, we need that file path type. So let's go copy it out of here. Because one of the neat things about TypeScript is that by default everything is structurally typed, which means if you have a type that's defined the same way, it's treated as the same type for like compatibility purposes. Like if I say file path is this and somebody else also says file path is this, for example, somebody who's importing this library, the TypeScript compiler will know that those are really the same thing, even though they were defined in different places. And yet you can get nominal typing by doing this kind of thing, by specifying a property that indicates the nominal type, and then just making that property optional because you don't actually want to be passing that around at runtime. What else do we need? We need blob. Blob like one is not defined. So let's just copy that in here. And these things, I don't actually want people using this utility class to get the blob like definitions because I might eventually move those somewhere else. Like publish this and then just refer to it. Could even put these definitions are from TD types library, and we call it TD types at 0.1 slash synx.ts, and I won't explain why that name is chosen. I thought it might have been in here. Here's the README. If you want to pause, you can read about that. Anyway, I might eventually publish that and then import from there rather than redefining these types inline. So yeah, TD types, the idea is it's mostly type definitions. It's not entirely type definitions. There are some like utility functions in there for like if you have a file and want to turn it into a blob-like, how do you do that? Although that might actually be one that's not in there because I want it to be platform agnostic. Like the way that you read a file in Deno is different than the way you read a file if you're in the context of a web browser, even though they're both JavaScript. So the environments are different, and I didn't want to put anything in there that assumed you were actually in Deno, because I will commonly use Deno to compile and bundle some TypeScript slash JavaScript collections of code to run in the browser. That's been a really handy thing, actually. And if you have references to Deno in there, well, and you might have some trouble because it'll say this type doesn't exist in one of the platforms you're targeting. So ideally, you just don't refer to it. There should be a tab here. That's what I think. I think there should be a tab there. I might be kind of weird, but it's like, yeah, it's a blank line, but it's part of this block. It's part of this block first. It's a blank line second. If you started a comment here, you would do it there, not there. Therefore, there should be a tab here. Just my opinion, man. Visual Studio Code, I think, doesn't know that. And actually, yeah, there we go. So the important thing here is reader to iterator. Reader to iterator, and it's actually an iterable, not an iterator. And moreover, you can only call this once. If you try to iterate over the stream again, it should probably tell you you're not allowed to do that. What are you doing? And so what I could do, I'm not sure if this will work, but let's try it. Let's say started equals false. So once you've created the iterator, if started, throw new error, can't, how should we say this? Can't create new iterator for stream already. If I say this, maybe I'll know what I mean. Previously, and I don't like to use backticks unless I'm actually doing backtick stuff. Backticks are the way in JavaScript slash TypeScript that you can interpolate variables. You know, like hello, your name goes here. They're actually pretty neat because you can have functions that you prefix it like that, and it can actually treat these in different ways, and it gets past like an array of chunks, and so you can do things other than just string interpolation with those. Started equals true. All right. So in this case, in the case of a stream, an arbitrary stream, we don't want people to be able to restart it by asking for a new iterator. An iterable is a thing that can give you an iterator. Whereas for a file, in this case, because the file presumably still exists and we can always start it again, the iterable returned for a file does this call? Yeah, this is a Deno specific thing, and that's fine. It can always be restarted because we just open the file inside the function that creates the iterator, deno.open. So you can open a file, yeah. And really, this doesn't need to be inside a file blob-like. Like, we can have that, sure. Oh, somebody messed up their indentation. Ha, much better. See, that's how you can tell if your indentation's wrong. If if you select the code and you see that, nope, that's wrong. Again, just my opinion, man. A lot of people disagree with me. They think that blank lines, even if they're inside a block, should actually be zero length. So what I wanted to do here is say export file file to iterable. And then, did this take a buffer? It did. So this should be the same thing. It should take a file path, which is, of course, a file path, which is a string, by the way. And it'll return this iterable. Yep. Export, there's no public because this is just a function. Export function. All right. It's a bit happier now. Oh, and I think that's all we had to do. So if you pass in a buffer, it'll reuse that buffer. For each chunk. So if you're really careful about your buffer usage and know that it's being reused every time we ask for a new chunk, then you can use less memory and have less heap thrashing because we're just writing to that same piece of memory over and over again. And then you process it as you go. If you don't pass in a buffer, though, it'll assume that then the buffers it gives you will be unique. So you'll be able to store them. It'll give you a unique buffer for each chunk. Will have its own thing, and the garbage collector will have to get involved. So this is kind of my way of having both a less efficient but more safe way to use this library and a more efficient, but you better know what you're doing. It's like if you pass in a buffer, then it's because you want that buffer to get overwritten in the process of doing this. Therefore, you're much more likely to know what you're doing, right? So that rather than just have a flag that's like do it the efficient way, anybody might see that flag and like not know what it means. Whereas if they pass in the buffer, like the optimization is directly related to that buffer. So hopefully that kind of makes it clear what the optimization is and why you have to be careful with it. Anyway, all we're doing here, so then this class is a bit simplified. All this has to do is call file to iterable. And it might be, you know what I was saying earlier, I want things to be platform agnostic, and this is very Deno specific. Not, this one is not. Actually, no, all of these are. You know what I should do is I should just rename this entire Deno stream util. Because if you're, this is like a specific implementation of these functions that work based on Deno streams. Now these types, here's another thing that we do. I don't think I invented this practice, but so your internal utilities that they have to be exported. Like these symbols, these classes need to be exported. Blob. But you really don't want people using your library to reference these things, even though they could, is you put a underscore in the part of the package name. Here's a thing I like to do, like if the name of this, what do they call it, module is like the class name, then you can import that and have that class be the default import, which allows you to, if I was import blob like one from blob, nope, blob like one.ts, it would allow you to just do that as opposed to doing that, which means something different. This isn't obviously I wouldn't be doing that here. I'm probably confusing you by saying that. Export, really, I just want to export, and these things would be in, I should just like directly, if I'm gonna put these in here, just directly copy the structure of the other library. So this blob-like one actually does that. Allow buffer reuse. Oh yeah, allow buffer reuse. And so that should be in there too. Although, here's a place where, the structural typing doesn't help you because this is actually a specific object. And if you import different libraries, you'll get different versions of that. And I'm just not gonna, if, how does that work? Well, I'm not gonna support that in this version of it. Is of length 0, then that buffer cannot be used for non-empty chunks, and the iterator must provide its own. So if you want buffer use, but you don't want to pass in a buffer, you pass in that very specific buffer. So I'm just going to remove the reference to that. Actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't compare it by like pointer. It just says is the length 0. So actually, it would be fine. To just copy this object into this library. I might not even be using it, but just, sort of for completeness and just to drive the point home that I really did. Copied from syncs td types at 0.1. May want to publish that library and import rather than copying into here. All right, so I'm doing that. Oh, no, it's same thing here. All right, so these two things are correct as far as Visual Studio Code is concerned. And then we go back here and we import those. Import blob-like one and from dirt slash underscore. Whoa, I did not. I don't really like it when my computer just inserts a bunch of stuff. It's like if I wanted that, I would have started typing that. Syncs. The reason I called it syncs, I tried to avoid talking about that earlier, but it's syntactic typing, sort of. Like if you have an object and you want to be like, it's sort of a metadata about the object, but embedded it in the normal data, which you should avoid doing. uh, if you want to have metadata, that should be like its own separate thing so that there's no confusion between what's data and what's metadata. But that's why this exists. It's so that you can kind of hint at like, okay, this is a string, but what does it mean? It means a file path. And there's some funny cases. I wrote this big long blog article about it. Actually, yeah, like if you really want to, it was not good. It was is this one, overthinking TypeScript types. So yeah, head over to nuke24.net/plog/32.html if you want a more in-depth discussion with monologue ramble. Anyway, I think our utility library is done. Like we have the stuff in here that we need to have in here. And the proof that it works would be, so currently test.tef test the file containing the unit tests, it also copies this stuff. So let's say, no, we're not going to use that. We're going to use, we find the red dots. We're going to use the new library that we just wrote. File blob like from dot slash, no, if I wanted 2 dots, I would have typed 2 dots, you dumb thing. Might have to learn how to configure Visual Studio Code to stop doing that. Deno stream util, yep. Should probably put some documentation on here, like why utilities for converting Deno readers and files into async iterable uint8 array, so that the TEF library may consume them. And so file blob like, yeah, well, they can go read about that, whatever. If you want to know what this does, right, you go to the, in Java we would say override. That's not a thing here in TypeScript, but if I misspelled this, it would complain. On the other hand, if this was just defining a brand new thing, well, it wouldn't complain, and that's kind of what override is supposed to protect you from. It's like, this is definitely intended to override a method defined in the interface. So if it doesn't, then I messed up, and please complain. I don't know if there's a way to do that in TypeScript. In C++, you just use the keyword override. Anyway, I'm the only one who's going to use this stuff. It doesn't matter. What's this block? I don't know. It's just the main block where all the tests are, I guess. The tests. What's wrong down here? Blob like 1. Oh, right. We would need to import that also. The tests. I could do these alphabetical. I don't really know what is the correct order. Oh, you know what? Okay, this hints at a problem. We want to refer to blob like 1. Maybe we'll just also re-export blob like 1 from in here because we have a thing. I think we have to say, do we have to say export type? Yeah. What's wrong with this? Export type blob like 1. Maybe we have to export blob like 1 from. And it might tell us that we need like a okay, well, first of all, we got to delete this part. We might have to say export type. Whoops. Okay, now it's happy. So I didn't want people using the library to have to dig into util, but since we're defining this and there's no other library that properly does it yet, okay, there's a little compromise. We just define blob like 1 as something that you can import in here. So in that case, we can just do this. Don't need this separate line. There is still an issue. Blob get chunk iterable. Okay, what's the problem though? What is the issue? Argument of type async iterable is not assignable to parameter of type async. Oh, yes. Right, because I made the mistake. When I defined blob like one of saying, well, it could be either a regular iterable or an async iterable. I think that might have been not a great idea. Because it makes the calling code more complicated, because then you have to, like, in most cases, it's going to be an async iterable. I should have said it has to be an async iterable. Thing is async iterator. So here I have a function to, this thing always, that's an iterator. I think I have a function in here that deals with that. To async iterable. So if we look at the code that I deleted, it just always returned a async iterable, which maybe if we know that it's that kind of, we could just define a new type because we know in this case, yeah, okay, it's a blob like one. We could be like blob like one async only or something like that. Oh my gosh, this is getting a little bit hairy. We could call it blob like two. Blob like two is a subset of blob like one. Any blob like two is also a blob like one, so that would be, but if you need one that only gives async iterables. So, okay, let's go look at blob like one in the TD types library, see if in here, did I do anything? Because I've run into this problem before. Or maybe I'm just like, no, you just got to figure it out. It could return either, and you just have to be able to copy async iterable, get chunk iterator, get chunk iterator. So how does this thing? Oh, it takes either. That's why. Because that's the thing is 408 can deal with either an iterable or an async iterable. And I wonder, well, maybe that's the case with what function parse TEF pieces. No, I think it needs an async iter. I thought that I wrote, I thought I wrote some functions to turn an async iterator, and I probably have, I just might not be in any of these libraries in like a normal place. Uh, iterable, async iterable, async, ooh. This thing takes or it returns a regular iterable. So I missed those first two. Nope. Okay, so nothing in here really. I don't think I have anything that can take a, and it might be that I used to have something like that, and I was like, that just complicates the library. So since I know in this case, why don't I just invent a new type here? Thanks to thanks to TypeScript's structural typing, this should really not be an issue. Um, so we'll just do this. We'll say it's not really a blob-like one. It's an async blob-like one, which should be self-explanatory. Hopefully, I don't like overload that term. So we say an async extends blob-like one, and all we're going to do is we're going to say that it narrows the definition a little bit, because you can't return an iterable. It has to be an async iterable. Same as blob-like one, but get chunk iterator always returns an async iterable. Yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. Hey, look, there's no red over here anymore. I wonder if I can run this stuff. It might throw a fit because, okay, so it didn't throw a fit. It works great. Everything's fine. That was really fast. Let's go run it over here just to make sure that I didn't like. So the problem I was expecting to have is that unit tests that refer to files, if you're running it from within Visual Studio Code, like it doesn't run it from the project directory necessarily. It might be running it from your workspace directory, so you need to figure out the path based on the path of the module that defines the test. And that is actually tricky in Deno because Deno doesn't know about Windows paths, um, or at least the standard library. It gets confused by Windows paths. So I had to kind of write my own function that would take the URI, that's what you get when you say import.metadata.url, and actually turns it into a file path so that you can do your regular file path logic with it. Where is this defined? See, this is another thing that should probably go in the underscore util. I don't need to put it there. I mean, it's fine. If it's in underscore util, right, that means that I'm not this dealing with file paths is out of the scope of the TEF library. Don't go importing that from it. But yeah, in order to make things really, this stuff is too, which is why it wasn't included originally, but it's just such a pain to use the library without it. Anyway, deno test tef.test, and it should complain at us that it doesn't have permission to read files. Requires read access. Yep. Deno test allow read, and I think we can give it the test data. When you hit tab in Windows, it forgets all your later arguments, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, we can just tell it has read access to them. Everything works. Everything's fine. Great. So since those unit tests passed, I'm not using in these tests, they test one of the things that I added. They don't test the other thing. They test file to iterable. They don't test reader to iterable. It's a lot of the same code. I mean, it's pretty small. It's pretty trivial. I think it works. I added this part. What I could do is say like, how can I make a temporary reader from within a unit test? I'm not actually sure. Not sure how to do that. And I don't want to sit here and figure it out right now. Unit test somehow. And that should make sure that second call to this function, which is, you don't have to type that usually because you're doing a for, or in this case, because it's async. or not async, for await. It means you're going to wait for item to resolve because it actually comes from a promise that you get by calling this. See, here's where we, well, since this is also defined as async, you don't actually see the promise stuff. I'm not going to try to get into that. Anyway, what I want to do, throws an error, whereas should also have a unit test for this, and really this should all be its own library maybe. But that's kind of like somebody else has probably made really similar libraries, and so I feel silly putting that on deno.land. But I should probably just get over that and make it a library. In the meantime, it's fine that it's just in here in util. Or rather, make sure that we can iterate over a file repeatedly. Also, I should probably test that things get closed, whereas this one you may notice that we don't close the reader because the reader's passed in. This guy's got to make sure it gets closed. And you can do that with a finally block if you're doing async iterators. If we throw a exception from within the iterator, then the for loop, if a try finally block around the for each loop that iterates, the finally block will get called. If you don't do anything too weird. Like I think I kind of understand how it works, but there's so many levels of abstraction just in like, oh my gosh, the iterating and then the asynchronous nature of it, it gets a little bit, I don't want to say hairy because it actually is pretty elegant, but there are a few things that you got to keep in your head if you're like writing your own iterators and stuff. If you don't understand how it works, you're going to be in trouble, I guess is what I'm saying. Right, the tests still run. I didn't break anything by adding those comments. Add util and util. So what I want to do here is say add denos. I'm going to just call it this. And what I like to do is, I'm just so used to typing git commit -m, and then client, right? Client code. Library is the server code, and now I'll just say users of this library don't need to invent their own deno.reader to or file path to, oops, async iterable uint 8 array functions, which will be just amazing. Now, in order to get it published, okay, we'll do git push. We're not breaking anything, so we don't want to change the first non-zero part of the tag. This is sort of considered like the major version. When you're on major version 0, this kind of takes the role of major version in according to the semver convention. Also, there's something wrong with my remotes here. Nope, there isn't. My remotes are fine. It's just that one of these git push runs a bunch of pushes in parallel because it can. It's probably this one. Anyway, did I just make a 034 git push minus tags? So if we go to deno.land, I think we'll see that reflected immediately. deno.land x tef 0.3.4. There it is. It's already up there. So cool stools. Um, Now, what were we doing? Oh yeah, we were doing this. This doesn't even say anything about. Yeah, yep. Let's call that done. I did it. I mean, according to the unit tests anyway, it works. I don't need to do 95. I don't think I need to do extensive testing. So we'll say, yeah, did that. Could use more tests. See to do comments in deno.streamutil.ts. TS. And so I'm going to say this is done. Now the reason I wanted to do that though, let's just add that to this same task so we don't have to progress in progress. Update list-todo.ts to use that utility library instead of copying definitions. I could call this done and make a new. Okay, you know what? That's the right way to do things. Let's just do that. Let's call this one done because I want to show you also making new tasks. Well, I guess I made one already, but make that its own library. Yeah, I don't want to do that right now. But task M4909T, need a new ID. You can take any of these. You know, it doesn't have to be in order. Let's just show it doesn't have to be in order. Let's just take that one. Whoops, I didn't mean to click that. Where's this new one? Okay, so this is also a subtask of 93. Oh, yeah, it's a subject of this video, making this video. Is it? Did I really mean to say that? Oh, that's not 93. This is 93. But it's also a subtask of making this video, honestly. Okay, so title. You can either put the title here or do this. I think this is the more proper way to do it. Have list-todo.ts use, what is it called? tdtef at 0.3.4/util/deno-stream util.ts. Use, you know what I can do? Import stuff from in. Make this as close to like the actual code I'm gonna write. No, that's stupid because it's import. It's not going to be close enough to really make sense to pretend it is. Instead of copying yeah, status to do. If you don't give it a status, the default assumption is that it's to do. If you don't say it's done, it ain't done. This one's done. 93. So 93. So what this does is it says that project 93 and project 119 or task 119, neither of these can be considered done until all the subtasks are done. And now I'm going to say, going to add that new stuff, commit it. Might as well. Well, I took an ID from the ID allocations list, so that's a good reason. Working on tdtef list to do slash workflow video. All right, so I want to finish this video. So any subtask of the video, which this is the remaining one, needs to get done here. In this case, I'm not using taskme.bat because I have a specific task that I want to finish rather than just some random task. So we go. Okay, let's close everything here. There's a kitty outside meowing. Normally I would go tend to the kitty, but I suppose I could pause this video. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go over here and say make a new scene, and then we'll add some text. This is in OBS. Um, break, and yeah, that'll be cool. And what we're gonna say is, I suppose I could show you what I'm doing over here. Taking cat tend break for tending to a kitty who has kitty needs and is meowing outside my window. That's what we're going to say. And then we're going to switch to that. Yeah, switch to that scene. Do I have to double click on it? Why is it still showing this screen? Desktop. Oh, we are. It doesn't replace my whole desktop. Man, things get kind of confusing when when you got your video recorder running on the same. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm trying to fix. Oh, I can't show you what I'm doing and also be in here at the same time. Okay, that's what I. Nope. Never mind. Whatever. Here you go. Okay, I'm gonna hit pause. Let's see if this works. Welcome back. That's me sipping my coffee, which I had kind of forgotten about. Ow. Protein bar chunk. Coffee and protein bars is part of the workflow, so that's important. All right, what were we up to? I think. Right, so we're going to fix list-todo.ts. Control P. It's not Control Shift R. That does something different in Visual Studio Code. In Eclipse, you do Control Shift R to open a file. In Visual Studio Code, it's Control P. Wait, so I don't need this anymore. I don't need this. I don't need that. Actually, I never even used that. ListToDo operates entirely based on standard input. It's part of the reason I wanted to move that out. So what do we say? We say reader to async iterable, I think is what it's called, right? 0.3.4 / util / deno stream util. And I think we're going to have to click cache. What do you mean it's not being used? What am I using down here then? Reader to, I guess I called it reader to iterator. Oh, maybe it is called reader to iterator. What the heck is it called, man? I mean, I just wrote this, right? I should know. Iterable. Well, I think that's all there is to it. Might as well update this to 0.3.4 while we're at it. I mean, we don't have to. I didn't change anything. I could leave it as is. So what do? We say, well, run it again. Oh, right. Okay, so we say task me. Should work. Looks good. That's the one that I don't want to work on right now. Oh, I could. We could do that next. I could just keep going here. How long is this video, man? It's already an hour long. Uh, well, anyway, the reason I'm running this is to show that this still works. Yep, it still works, and that's great. And so we can, what is it we're working on? In progress. What's the one that's in progress? This video is in progress. Also, this one is in progress, but not anymore. I did it. Well, okay. Honestly, it is in progress because I haven't committed my changes yet. Replace. Why don't I just? What did I do? I did this. This is what I did. M4909T. They like us to do this at work. Include the ticket numbers 165 in our commit messages. Import stuff. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what it's doing, right? TDTEF. Well, yeah. TDTEF means deno.land /x/TEF. Push that. There, git push. Cool, cool. Okay, hey, cool. Now this thing is done. Done. Let's call it done. Project. The reason I'm always saying the specific file is because this repository has other stuff in it that I don't really need to be showing in this video. Yeah, all right. Cool stools. My D drive is not mounted right now. Hence that error message. You know, this is on the one hand, this video is long enough. On the other hand, sitting here doing this sort of live, I mean, I'm recording, I'm not streaming, is sort of inspiring me to keep going. Hey, how did we end up with no indentation on that line? This is bullcrap. So there was another task that looked again, this is silly. I don't want to make it its own library right now. I could. Why not? Why not do that, huh? Well, here's a reason why not to do it. Let's make it better first. No, let's not make it better first. Let's make it its own library, and then we can update it as time goes on. What should we call it? We could call it list-to-do. And I'm going to put a number after that. And I think that number is going to be 27. I'm going to go and allocate an ID for it. And I'm not going to show that because I don't want people going into OID allocator and messing with it. Right now there's no login system. It's security through obscurity, so I'm not going to show it. Togos's game experiments. Also, these days being used for numbering Togos's projects. ID for list to do list project. Command line to do list processor project. That's what I will call this. Allocate an ID, and our ID is 27 from some particular namespace. Different namespace than we're using for the tasks here. So, well, guess what we're supposed to do, its own deno library. One reason it's kind of handy to put that in here, status is in progress, is if in the process of this video I forget what I'm doing, I can go back here and just grep for which things are in progress. The video itself, obviously, and one other thing. So what do we call this? We call this ListToDo27. That's my very cool way of, labeling projects in such a way that if I want a new to-do list later, they don't get called like the same thing. I do the same thing with music tracks. I kind of put arbitrary numbers after the end that usually start with the year. In this case, it's not date-based. It's just allocated from a list of integers. ListToDo27. And we're gonna get init tog. Get init tog. Yeah, we're gonna make this a project that we're gonna publish to deno.land. github.com. Create new project. How am I not signed in to GitHub? Is that even my... Yeah, I think I got that right. I haven't had to click that button for a while. Now we gotta do 2FA, i.e. use Authy to log in here. GitHub. I'm not typing that in the right place. Hopefully, okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. 531741. That's a funny thing. Well, it's a funny thing that I said that out loud, but it's not like I said my password. It's a one-time thing. Doesn't matter. New repository. Waybags. Yeah, that's a guy I used to work with at Factorio. He's like kind of brilliant. Ooh, somebody liked my PHP get ignore project. I haven't messed with that for a long time, but it's got unit tests. It works, at least according to the unit tests. ListToDo27. Deno library for processing your to-do list.tef or whatever. Yeah, cool. I don't want to mess with it. I'm going to do that all myself. Yeah, make it MIT. I don't care. No, I don't want license. We'll force push to overwrite that. Maybe, you know what? I won't force push it all. Git remote add GitHub. And I like to write my SSH remotes like that for whatever reason. I just think that, it looks nice. It's more like a conventional URL. GitHub master, so I'll have that initial commit. That's fine. Oh my gosh, did they call it main? One branch. Yeah, these idiots called master main. Yeah, I don't care. Okay, try again. Here we are. So I think all we need to do then is take this file and move it Explorer. So we can just open that project in the workspace and move it over. Add folder to workspace. Oh my gosh, this is so tiny. Why is it so tiny? Probably because I don't know why. It's very tiny. That was crazy. Yeah, I'm the author, man. To-do list 27. Dan Stevens. Psh, Togos. Okay, fix that. I'm lazy. Turns out in the Windows command line, you don't need a closing quote. So to save myself 0.1 seconds, I'll just not type it. Hopefully I don't bring that habit with me, when I'm working on the Linux command line or something. All right. Anyway, all we need to do. Oi. Where did I put it? L G D E F G H I J K L L L list to do. So we take this file, Control X. Visual Studio Code knows what I mean by Control X. And we paste it here. And then the other thing we should do is if you want to use this thing as a library, like maybe somebody wants to use all these functions. I don't know. We say don't actually run this main function. If import.meta.main, I think that's how we do it. And then, our task me is going to be broken because we moved the file. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Git add list-todo.ts, git status, git commit my them. The amazingness of this to-do lister is now online. Is that even true? Git log. Okay. I was worried that I hadn't configured. I did a global git config to do that. I don't do that on work computers, of course, because there they want me to be called Dan Stevens and have a work email address. Anyway, git tag. No, let's call it 0.1.0. I like to start there. Actually, let's call it v0.1.0. And now let's remove these ones. I used to just do these bare numbers, but somebody online convinced me that tad, yeah, I want to tad the tags. It's good to start your tag prefixes with V. So I think for new projects where I don't already have a bunch of tags in the old style. Of course, these are all, I've never used fat tags. I could just rename them. Doesn't matter. Git push and git push minus tags. I think because yeah, there we go. All right, so we go to GitHub. We say, yo, check out this rad file. What is this? Yeah, yeah, you're terrible. Yes, I know. Okay. So since it's got a tag, I think now we just go to deno.land. Third-party modules. And I think we say publish a module. And I don't think we even have to log in here. To-do list 27. Oh, there's a typo. No subdirectory. Add the webhook. So we actually just go to, or actually it's called list-to-do. ListToDo, lots of T's in a row there. That is what it's called. Um, ListToDo27, yep. I guess another advantage of sticking these numbers in here is that you don't accidentally mess with anybody else's, you know, better libraries. Not true. They're probably worse. But settings. How do we go to? We go to settings, settings, and we find webhooks. Let's add a webhook. Payload URL. Is there anything special we have to do here? Settings, webhooks, application JSON. Let me select individual events. Let me select individual events, and we select branch or tag creation. Sounds good. Pushes, add webhook. And I think we can run it if it hasn't already run. Like, we haven't created a tag, but we did create the webhook. So does it automatically run it for? Do we have to like create a new tag? That'd be dumb. Well, let's go look here. Oh, hey. Create a new tag release in the repository. So I think if we go to ListToDo27, it'll say, yeah, it doesn't exist because we haven't pushed anything yet. Git push tags. Of course, we already pushed that tag, so that's not gonna. So what we do is we go to GitHub and we say dash code tags. Let's delete the tag. How do we delete this tag? We might just have to make 011. Whatever. It's identical to 0.1. I don't like that. I don't like that we have to. I might have been able to do it a less stupid way, but this should work. Yep, there we go. So now, yeah, well, I don't know. Deno run. Don't need self-dir anymore because we don't need to refer to this directory. We just run. Right, we run. Here we go. And I think if we just say this, it shows us a web page, but that's because we're in the browser. I don't really like that. I don't like that it returns different things depending on who's asking, but not fighting that battle right now. And I would like to put this on a separate line so I can read it. Cat. I love cats. We're going to cat these files, and we're going to pipe that to this thing. Is that a funny enough way to write that command? Anyway, does it work? Oh, that did not work. I messed something up. Cat run. I may have run into this trouble once before, that Windows doesn't actually let you do things quite in that way. Oh, I used the wrong I'm thinking the Unix shell here, not the Windows one. This should work. Caret will take these 4 lines and treat them as 1 line. Ta-da! There we go. So since it's been published to deno.land, the only other thing I need to do, delete it from here. And of course, if I really want to run it on the local copy, I just take the contents of that bat and run it myself if I'm like doing development. Okay, what did we call this? We called this, well, that's part of it. I'm being spied on. Reference. Deno.land version of instead of including in this repo. That's what we're doing. Wonderbar. Go back to this guy. Status. This is done. Done. It's done. Great. We could go in here and mark it done, but I mean, we could commit that it's done, but I don't actually care about that because I didn't allocate any things. So the only thing left to do, is there anything in progress? In progress. Yes, this video is in progress. Well, I know how to fix that. We go over here and we say stop recording. I hope you enjoyed this workflow demo of, well, okay, one other thing. If you want to use this now, because it's on deno.land, task, oh right, it's not open in here, it's open in here. You can just do this. You can just say deno run that, pipe your TEF files to it. I mean, you have to have deno installed, obviously. There's instructions for doing that in dev environment setup in the SynthGen repository. Deno, choco install deno, and to install Chocolatey, you follow the directions there. Or you can run the batch file that I include in the SynthGen repository. But random people on the internet who might run across this video don't have that. But you might have it. Or you could just follow the directions from chocolatey.org. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. I think I'm supposed to go to Rice Lake and buy some cat food or something. TTFN.